right, it's a pleasure to be here, and apologies for the schedule mishap. Anyway, it is what it is. If you've signed up for my breakout session, you will have to find another one, but there will be great ones out there. I want to open with a maxim. It's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. A lot of people have heard that over the years, and I think it's never been more widely accepted among the tech elite than it is at this moment. Where is the tech unicorn that doesn't have some laws they don't want to follow? Maybe most of the laws, it might seem some days. If you were YouTube trying to get some video content onto your video sharing platform, what a pain it would have been to need to go and get licenses. You go to pitch the folks at Viacom, and they'd probably want a lot of money, or maybe they'd just say no. They don't like your site. They want it done with their color scheme and hooked into their stuff, so get lost. Well, YouTube didn't bother, right? We now know, thanks to Viacom's amazing litigation, that they stole the videos. They themselves, the co-founders of YouTube, uploaded South Park episodes onto YouTube because they knew that that would be the way to make YouTube successful from the get-go. People wanted to watch South Park. It was hard to do on your computer in that era, but they found a solution. And how about some of the current unicorns? Airbnb, I suppose, would have found it very difficult to petition all of the state and local governments around the country, around the world, to get this short-term rental stuff legalized, that you can have commercial rentals in non-commercial properties that don't have the right fire extinguishers and aren't zoned and aren't taxed. It would have been a lot of work to go to all those places, and so they didn't. And that's fundamentally what I've been thinking about for a couple years now. It's been amazing to watch these companies succeed. Of course, as consumers, we mostly love them. If you need to go somewhere and it's raining, or you're just in a hurry, or you don't want to pay very much, you'd probably be crazy to call a taxi at this point, right? Who would do that? If you have a smartphone, you'll surely use Uber, and if you don't have a smartphone, your battery is out or something, you'll find someone who does and send them some money as a side payment to your buddy someday. Look, you'd be crazy not to use these services, and yet, I suggest, we should all be kind of alarmed at the decline in the rule of law, this chaos of entrepreneurship that evolves into seeing who can take it, who can take this amazing risk of ignoring the law and defying what seems like civil society and a democratic process that's sort of working. So let me give some specifics in that regard. If you had advised Halo, a company that tried to do Uber's business some years ago, you might have told them they were on the straight and narrow and they could be proud of what they were doing. They were using government-inspected, licensed, commercially insured, commercially permitted vehicles driven by drivers who had commercial driver's licenses, who had had real background checks, no sexual assaults in their history, and so forth. They were doing it right. They were doing everything right, and it cost a small fortune. They had, a 70% cost disadvantage compared to Uber. And so you won't be surprised to hear that they were run out of London, they were run out of New York. Their CEO, sort of my friend from an earlier era, was thrown out by the board, which said, what kind of a lousy operation are you running here? Uber's worth countless billions and you're hardly hanging on. You're fired. What advice do we give our students and our friends and ourselves then when the only strategy for starting a successful tech startup is to be as much of a bad boy as Travis Kalanick, the CEO of Uber? Well, an amazing thing about this story is that Uber itself appears to have been affected. You might remember that Uber began with black cars, which were legal and properly licensed and insured. And in 2013, Lyft came along. Lyft, growing out of a commuter tradition, I believe the founders genuinely wanted to get cars off the road and reduce traffic. They had another business about finding people who were driving in the same direction who might want to commute with you. But they figured out that the Lyft-style business that we now all know, and UberX too, might be a more promising business. And so here's what Travis wrote on the Uber site, where it used to be he could just write what he wanted, I think without any lawyers or others supervising him. That's been changed. The Lyft approach is quite aggressive. They are betting that Uber, already a market leader, is too weary to enter the non-licensed market in the face of regulatory scrutiny. Wow, this is a different side of Travis than the one we now know, one who's worried about regulators. And they're betting that regulators, for the most part, will be unable to act or enforce in time to stop them. So Travis looks at this and he decides, actually, they've made the right bet. Although it's aggressive and he all but says it's illegal, to hell with it, he's going to do it too. And can you blame him? He'd be the CEO of a lemonade stand if he hadn't copied them. And so what advice do I give my entrepreneurially minded students when they come to me with this sort of problem? What advice do you give the Google video product managers who find themselves in the impossible position prior to the YouTube acquisition of trying to compete with YouTube when YouTube has South Park and they don't? It's a hell of a thing, and it's no fun to be in the position of having to compete with a competitor who doesn't follow the law when you do. So what could you do about it? One natural thing to say, and with Washington all broken and Brussels focused on other things, and really the political process not working at its very best, one natural possibility, and I'm sure plenty of people in the room have this instinct, is to shrug and get over it. Fasten works pretty well, celebrate their excellence, and take Fasten rather than Uber, and feel like you've done a good thing that way. And given all the things Washington needs to be doing and other governments, there's a certain appeal to not focusing on this one. Don't get me wrong. But I claim that would be something of a lost opportunity. It would take us to a world where entrepreneurship comes to involve not just building a better mousetrap, but also having a thick skin for illegal conduct in a way that I think is kind of hard to defend. More than that, when you select for companies based on their willingness to ignore the law, you get companies that may not be companies we can be that proud of. How could it be that Uber in Europe thought it would be okay to have a service where you press a certain button, not Uber X, not Uber Black, Uber where the driver is a woman wearing only underwear? They had that for 8 hours. How did that make it through Uber's quality control and lawyers and PR? And how about the scandal that the news site The Information broke last night, where Uber installed on virtual smartphones a set of fake Lyft accounts to see where the Lyft drivers were, compared that with the actual Uber drivers who had Uber driver app installed on their phone, figured out which drivers had both apps, and sent some very targeted promotions to those Uber drivers saying, if you'll drop Lyft, then we'll give you such and such a bonus. All you will be shocked to hear, totally contrary to Lyft's terms of service, where you promise not to reverse engineer their app. Now, maybe those terms of service are unenforceable. I'm not a big fan of the harsh conditions in some companies' terms of service, but Uber sure has been quick to enforce them against anyone who hacks their app, say, to find billing errors, which you probably won't be surprised to hear they've had some of. So, what a mess. We get a company that thinks it's okay to send women in their underwear, to have uninsured drivers on the road, not to really do the background checks they say they're doing, to overcharge customers, and on down the road. I don't really want to live in a world where the tech companies that we all use day in and day out are companies that got there by breaking the law, by building a corporate culture of breaking the law. I want this to be a business I can be proud of, a business I can participate in on the merits, a business where I can proudly teach my students how to do it, and hope that some of them have a fair shot by playing by the rules as I've tried to teach them. So that's what I've been thinking about. I'm sorry that I don't have a breakout session to offer you, but anyway, I'll be walking over to eat lunch with everyone and look forward to continuing the conversation that way.